afternoon, everyone. This is Gayla Kesey, and I am Education Manager at the Augusta Museum of History, and we are so glad that you joined us today for the sixth presentation in our series, our Brown Bag Series 2022. The theme this year is Era of Change, 1950 to 1980. And today's presentation by Leon Maben is Gwinnett Street, now Laney Walker Boulevard, during this era. June 1st, 1976, Augusta's Gwinnett Street officially became Laney Walker Boulevard on the first day of June during America's bicentennial year. The honor recognized two of Augusta's most famous past residents, the dynamic educator and activist Lucy Craft Laney, and the Reverend C.T. Walker, a nationally known preacher. Our guest speaker today, Leon Maben, is Vice President of the Board of Directors at the Lucy Craft Laney Museum of Black History in Augusta, Georgia. He was born and raised in the same neighborhood as the museum he supports today. He will share his thoughts on the changes that occurred from 1950 to 1980 during today's Brown Bag History Lecture. We are hosting today virtually so that Leon can join us since he tested positive, and we're hoping that this will be a slight case, but we're wanting to make sure that everyone hears from him, and so this was the best way to do that. With that in mind, Leon, I let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Gayla. First of all, I just want to thank you and the Augusta History Museum for thinking so highly of me to be one of your brown bag, lunch brown bag speakers. I really treasure, I guess, the being a resident and growing up in the area that we're speaking of today, which is Gwinnett Street, which was at that time, as you indicated, until 1976. The name changed to honor Miss Lucy Craft Laney and also Charles T. Walker, which as I didn't get an opportunity to meet either, but quite naturally, by me being raised in the community and what we call the Golden Blocks, I've got an opportunity to hear so much about them. And so what I've done was put together photos and my thoughts of being raised in the Gwinnett Street community. The first photo that you see is actually me in front of my house, my childhood home, really, Gayla.
All right.
And audience, which still stands, which is 1306 11th Street. And the reason I wanted to start here was to give you some idea of what the community looked like back during that time period of me growing up. It was back then you had a middle class, I guess you would say. My father was a trained barber and Maben, and back then the majority of the time the wife was the homemaker. They managed the house, they managed the home. My father, along with Mr. Kegler, who was also a community leader, they owned a barbershop together, which sits on 9th Street, which is now James Brown Boulevard. So pretty much we're gonna travel down memory lane, I guess we could say, along with me. And 11th Street, along with so many streets, get some clarity here. Quite naturally, you had three what we would call title Black communities back then, which is the Laney Walker, Bethlehem quarter, along with Turpin Hill, and along with Sand Hills, which made up your three Black communities. So quite naturally, I grew up in what we call the Laney Walker Bethlehem quarter. And so many of our main streets, like 11th Street, 12th Street, 13th Street, fed right into downtown Augusta, which we call Broad Street, and dead into Reynolds Street. So we're going to take a stroll down memory lane with me. As I can recall, I'm going to recall areas that had structure on it as I was growing up, and you would see where those lots are now vacant. So let's go down memory lane a little bit. First slide we come across is A.R. Johnson. When I was coming up, we had what we call, I guess, the neighborhood school system. So your goal was that we had many elementary schools. You had Charles T. Walker, Weed Elementary. You had Levi White, and my elementary school was Silas X. Floyd Elementary. So all of the elementary schools, once you finished there, your next step was, back then they had the junior high school system. So when I attended A.R. Johnson, it was A.R. Johnson Junior High. And then they built Sandbar Ferry, which is down in Eastview, what we nicknamed the bottom. That was then Sandbar Ferry Junior High School took some of the overcrowdedness. That, I guess, that would be the junior high school that the kids on the lower end of Gwinnett Street would attend. And then we all fed into, during that time period, the only Black high school in Augusta was Lucicraft Laney High School until around 1965, when they built T.W. Joseph, which stands for Thomas Walter Joseph. But as a kid growing up, everybody, all your grown-ups went to either one of these elementary schools, then A.R. Johnson, and then Laney High School. So as a kid, and as a teenager, you grew up, you couldn't wait for that moment that when you went over to A.R. Johnson Junior High to wear that purple and white, and then you went to Lucicraft Laney High School to wear the red and gray. So now A.R. Johnson is our magna school, magna high school. I believe A.R. Johnson deals strictly with engineering and medicine. The next photo you would see would be the parish house. The parish house sits on Pine Street, which runs off of Gwinnett Street, which is now Laney Walker Boulevard. And the parish house sits behind the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company Civic room. And the parish house with Christ Episcopal Church, which is there. I guess they still run it. And the photo that you see is my father is in there. My father would be all the way on the end. You probably could see his name, but I have Noah Maben. That is the Black Barbers Association getting their certificate of formation from the gentleman, the white gentleman there is from the State Department, awarding them that Black Barbers Association charter. And all those gentlemen you see are Black barbers during that time period. And they assemble over at the parish house. Next slide. I guess that, oh, no. Next, quite naturally, many churches, the community during my coming up, there was a great church community. Macedonia, which was one of the main churches in my community, sits on the corner of 8th and Laney Walker Boulevard now, and quite naturally back then was Gwinnett Street. But Macedonia, along with Tabernacle, along with Thankful, along with Trinity Semi Church, was one of your big, I guess you would call them mega churches back then, but that was your black, served the black community during that time period. Macedonia now sits on Riceboro Road, and this church is still ongoing. I'm glad to see that it's still, one thing that I like to point out in my presentation, that all the building, I'm so happy that preservation is still a fight in the Laney Walker Bethlehem quarter, along with Turpin Hill and Sand Hills. So I'm so happy to see that even though it's not Macedonia now, it's another church, it is still functioning. Next slide here is on the corner of 11th and Laney Walker Boulevard, which is now Gwinnett Street. This is the empty site that you see now, is where the Immaculate Conception school set, which was the Black Catholic school during my time, during my period of growing up. It is a shame that we could not preserve that building, or either the Archbishop or either the diocese of the Catholic Church didn't want to save it. But that's where the Immaculate Conception School set, and it was one of the main points in my community growing up, because we had access to the back of the school had basketball goals, because they had a basketball team, and the father at that time would allow us, the boys in the community, as long as we acted right, we could play in the back of the Catholic school and play basketball, because the court was cemented, and they had good goals. And if my memory serves me correctly, they were the first one to have, when the chain, instead of the cloth nets, they had the chain nets, and you could hear the ball go through. You could hear that whoosh sound whenever you made a basket. So that was an important fact.
Now, Leon,
yeah,
in 1967, 68 was when the Catholic diocese decided to merge the high school, Immaculate Conception High School, with Aquinas, right?
Right.
And up until then, it was essentially first through high school, right?
Yeah, it was first through high school, because right then Aquinas was predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they decided to merge, to, I guess, integration started. Quite actually, the school system in Augusta was quite actually under the federal guidelines of integrating the school system. So they had to fall in place also. And I believe you all are having the pleasure of showing the documentary, I believe, during Juneteenth, I believe.
Exactly, where June 26th is the next documentary about the two classes of 1968.
Right.
Exactly. And it's actually sold out. We're full. So
oh, wow.
Hopefully we can show it again.
Yeah, great history. I am so, I guess, I was hoping to get my name on the list, so I guess I have to wait on the rerun.
Yeah, you'll have to see it again.
but it was, I knew many of the kids that attended the Catholic school, and they were from the community. I could always remember the kids that was in my community, that seeing them walking to school like I would walk to Southern Florida. They'd be walking to school, but in uniform, because quite naturally, the Catholic school system, everybody wore a uniform, and it was a close knit. Even though we might have went to a different, even though me and my class went to more of a public school system, and whereas the Catholic schools, and we all got along. This building still stands. It's actually on the opposite side of the corner of 11th and Laney Walker, which when I was coming up Gwinnett Street. This is Mr. Johnson's Pure 76 oil station, with gas station, should be gas station. It was back then you had full service gas station. And Mr. Johnson, this was my Saturday job. I worked at Mr. Johnson Pure 76 gas station, oil station, every Saturday. And my job was to, when you drove up, to greet you, to ask you how much gas you wanted, pump your gas, check under your hood. I asked, would you like for your hood to be checked? And then I would check the pressure in your tires. And then I would clean your front windshield. And then I would collect your money, or either you would go inside and pay. So that was my job assignment, working at Mr. Johnson Pure Oil Station. And I'm so happy that building still stands and is now being rented out with, I can't think of the business that's in there now, but it's a lawn care business along with a car detail shop. And the reason
it stayed in the car business in one way.
yeah, but I always enjoy passing the buildings that are still standing, in particular, like when I worked there, and it brings back so many memories, not only for myself, but what once was in my community. And also, I like to point out that I ran across a poster that had all of the Black-owned businesses that existed along in the Golden Blocks community.
Oh, wow.
Running up and down Gwinnett Street at that time, 9th Street at that time. You're talking about, I counted 122 Black-owned businesses within that quarter. And that gives you some idea of how self-efficient the Black community was back then during segregation and Jim Crow. Quite naturally, as I indicated, you had over 122 Black-owned businesses. So the Black community, we really didn't have to, even though we had Jim Crow, we were not wanted in the white businesses. We pretty much had every business that a service within our community. This was Mr. Bryant's Gulf Oil Station, which was a block down, which sits on Gwinnett, Laney Walker Boulevard, and 10th Street. He had the Gulf. He sold Gulf oil, and so that's Mr. Bryant, which the pumps still sit there. And I wish I had recorded what the pumps indicated the last sale and how much gas was at that time. But I believe when I took this picture, it was less than $1 per gallon. Another signature, which was very close to the Gwinnett Street, was May's Mortuary, which was I think the funeral home business was one of the major businesses that a Black family or either African American could go into and make a success at it, but also make it generational. And that's the key, is having generational businesses. And as we all know, we lost the Willie Mays III, but we're talking about it lasted 3 or 4 generations, which is still functioning. I believe his daughter, either his wife, is running it, along with Janice, who was a long time, and Dorothy. Can't think of her last name, but they're running it now. And May's Mortuary is still standing strong.
May's was one of the first Black-owned funeral homes, wasn't it? Or one of the first, along with Dent's?
I think Dent's was the first, and I believe May's was second.
Yeah.
Okay. Penny Savings, this complex here Means a lot. Brings back many memories for me. But I am so happy that some of it is still able to still be saved and be functional. We're trying to Augusta Housing and Community Development is trying to bring this part of the business back. As a teenager, this was 9th Street, which is now James Brown Boulevard. But I can remember Fridays and Saturdays, you're talking about this was the shopping area for the Black community. Friday night, Saturday nights, we talking about wall-to-wall walking traffic. But we have penny savings. We had the Black-owned bank, which is penny savings, the loan bank, which was one of the anchors at that time of the Golden Blocks, along with the Lenox Theater, which was started by Mr. Warren. That was his goal, was that to create a Black business community. I believe, yeah. In the first photo to the right, that business, 2 doors down, that was my father. That's where my father's barber shop was. And that was one of my other jobs. I shine shoes on 9th Street in my dad's barber shop. So that was another one of my jobs. Gayla, we'll get to another photo that will show you where my customers came from. But a lot of my customers, quite naturally, not only was the men of the Black community, but also the Black soldiers. This is where the Black soldiers, back then it was Camp Gordon before it became Fort Gordon. So the soldiers would be bused in town on the weekend. So the Black soldiers would be dropped off at the Black USO, and the white soldiers would be taken on Broad Street to the white USO. So my customer flow was always up and down this street right here, Gail. So,
all right.
So as we travel down a little bit further from 12th and Laney Walker Boulevard, you will get an idea. It's empty now, but along that corridor, you had the Lavinia Pearson Cosmetology School, which she was I would have to say she was definitely a great Augustan. She had probably one of the only cosmetology schools located in Augusta, but pretty much located in the United States. From my understanding, Black women from as far as California would come to Augusta to study cosmetology at Lavinia Pearson Cosmetology School. Her property probably would have set right in that is in the back of Tabernacle's Family Life Center, which sits on the corner of 12th and Laney Walker Boulevard. This is on the corner of Laney Walker and 13th Street. This is the home of the Reverend and Mrs. Lavinia Pearson's home, which we I would have to say I would have to commend our Black Greek organizations and Black Greek sororities and fraternities for buying out some of our older properties and preserving them. And definitely this home is very important to the Black community because it was Miss Lavinia Pearson's home, which started, once again, we talked about her school earlier, Lavinia Pearson's cosmetology school. And her home is now owned by Zeta Phi Beta, Black sorority.
Now, is that a marker of some sort in the front of the house? Finding
yes,
information.
You will see historical markers like this along the Laney Walker corridor. This is believe this is the work of the Black of Augusta's, I think the Augusta Black Historical Society. And it recognizes try to recognize all of your history makers, all of your movers and shakers that helped shape the Gwinnett Street area, Laney Walker Boulevard now, your 9th Street. That was just they were just pivotal. They were very important during that time period, during segregation and Jim Crow, and also during the Reconstruction period um, um, in Augusta, in Black Augusta. Next would be another business. We oftentimes talk about the Golden Blocks, but the Golden Blocks was you would have to say was a mix of different business owners. This we oftentimes don't talk about the Chinese community. The Chinese had perhaps, I think we counted 68 businesses located within the Black community, and they had a concept of almost being located on every corner in the Black community. And
sort of like a Starbucks, huh?
So like a Starbucks, but you just didn't get coffee. You could, it was served as a grocery or either convenience store. Would be the concept, because you could go there and get your groceries, pretty much everything you need in the family, at either one of the Chinese-owned grocery stores. And I remember Tom Lynn's, because he sat on the corner not far from the house. Gary Tom rather, is he and I pretty much almost grew up together, because his store probably sold the best strawberry snow cones in the community. And I'm so glad to see that his building is still standing. On the side, if you see that side door there, that was Mr. Benny's shoe shine parlor. And Mr. Benny was one of the older Black gentlemen that kept the young guys like myself straight. They were always we could not lauder in his place. If we could only lauder rather after school. If you came in there and you're supposed to be in school, Mr. Benny ran you back. He ran you toward whatever school you're supposed to be to. So Mr. Benny. So I also remember Mr. Benny shoe shine parlor. The building here also sits on the same corner, across from the Immaculate Conception property. This was the Georgia Railroad Bank branch back when I was a little boy and a teenager. The front entrance would have been, the front entrance would be the photo on your right where the bus stop is. Where those triangle doors, that was where the main door into the Georgia Railroad Bank branch was. Could I get a close-up shot? But to the left of that building, there was a post office there that served the community. So the Georgia Railroad Bank was a branch that pretty much served the Black community, the Golden Blocks area. That's where I had my Christmas savings club in there. And Mr. Moonaham, I always remember his name. Mr. Moonaham was the branch manager, because I remember him because he gave me my first car loan during high school. Heritage Pine, that is Pine Street, which is the street that runs behind on the side of the Georgia Railroad Bank building, which is the street over from my street. Wanted to give you an idea of how things have changed, and these are all new homes on Pine Street. Pine Street consisted of homes back during my time period that looked pretty much resemble my family home, and some was perhaps a little what they call shotgun home. So Heritage Pine will give you an idea of the new look that's being done in my community. So I wanted to give you a shot of what it looks like during the as new growth, I guess you would say, new commerce is being immersed in the Laney Walker corridor.
And that's recent. That's not during our time period that change has come about.
Yeah. Right. I just want to give you an idea that how it's changed. Back when I was coming up, you would have had homes on this street that looked like my family home.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now we're looking at the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company, Civic Center, and the Black USO would have been located in the second door to your. If you look at the left photo, you can see the smaller door there of the main Civic Center was the meeting place for the community for the Pilgrim Health Life Insurance Company. At that time, they called it the Tea Room, and that's where they would have their community affair. They would pretty much have community meetings in there. But the Black USO, which once set, I believe, according to my sister, who was my older sister, who was the volunteer coordinator of the Black USO, it was on the corner of pretty much on the corner of Gwinnett and 9th, and then they got the opportunity to move over here when they got offered this space by the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company.
Oh, that was great.
Mm-hmm. And as I indicated, one of the great finds, I would say one of the great preservation, I would say, in our community was definitely the saving when the Walker Group, when Senator Charles Walker purchased the Pilgrim Health Life Insurance Company building. I believe the storyline of the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company is a tremendous story itself, which is a success story. Started with $2.50, and which grew to be one of your major Black-owned, not only a business, but Black-owned health and life insurance company, one of the biggest within the U.S.
Wasn't it the first Black
it was the
life
first
insurance company?
It was the first Black health and life insurance company to be formed in, I believe, in the state of Georgia, and I believe it was around 1896 or something like that.
Yeah, during Reconstruction. And a number of the buildings and the number of the businesses that we've been talking about got their start after Reconstruction, and then were able to continue through this time period. But what we're seeing is now they're empty. Those
right, exactly.
Like this one is no longer in business. The penny savings no longer in business.
No longer in business, right?
So, what do you think? Why?
I think numbers. Yeah, it's a great conversation piece there, Gayla. Ours number one was quite naturally the Great Depression. Coming out of the Great Depression was a corporate that probably was a demise. And second, I would have to say on one hand, integration was good, and on the other hand, integration was perhaps a got to be a thorn in our side. I guess we were so anxious to go downtown and support the white merchants till we forgot to really keep serving and keep the Black business community alive. Excuse me.
And sort of the same thing happened with your school system, because we integrated the school system, and that made a change as well. And people started moving out of the area.
Started moving, yeah. The movement, the shift started. And moving from the black communities to moving into, I think Augusta was going into developing West Augusta, and so that's where you found I remember Washington Road was a dirt. Was half. I remember when it was a dirt road. And now that's where pretty much all your major businesses. This community, even though it might have been white all, you had all your major on Walton Way, a street over behind the Walker Group building here, the Pilgrim Health Life Insurance Company building. You had all of your major car lots was located pretty much close in the downtown and in the black community. The Oldsmobile dealership, Chevrolet dealership, Pontiac, Cadillac, all of those was located in I would have to say they were part of. You would have to, if you mapped out the golden blocks, they would be fitted right in there. Speaking of the Immaculate Conception, I said this is where this building is still standing. I am prayerfully and hoping and praying that it can be purchased and purchased by it is owned by someone, but I'm hoping that we're able to, for a preservation-minded person, company, somebody to buy the building and save it. But this is where the nuns that taught over at the Immaculate Conception stayed.
So they were part of the community.
Yeah.
Not just as teachers, they were a part of the community.
They were part of the community. This is the Wallace Branch Library. It is part of. It was the only black library that me as a black student during that time period. That's where I could go and do my homework and do my research with that. And that we would have to be called to the to Reverend Wallace, which Fort Hart to this to Augusta to put a black library in the black community. That was around probably about 1927 is when it opened up. And it's still standing, still serving the black community, and still standing and serving the Laney Walker area. Even though the computer age has taken over, there is still a need for a library. Strollers Home, which sits right next to the Wallace Branch Library. The Strollers Home was a vision of Reverend C.T. Walker. He felt that was a need for black seniors. This is what we call back then, the title we call it the old folks home. And his vision was, because there was not a home for as black folks got older, for them to be able to I guess live out the rest of their day. There wasn't a convalescent home, but you just call it, I guess now it's sort of like Irving Towers. It would be things like Irving Towers and places like that for senior citizens. But that was
those that didn't have the family network.
Right.
Could come here.
And if you were still old and you didn't have a family, then yeah, you would reside here. So and it may have a different term now, but back when I was coming up, we called them the old folks home.
Mm-hmm.
And Tabernacle owns this building. They last talk with them, they have plans to preserve it, to renovate it, and let's hope and let's help them spearhead this and make this a dream come true. Because it is a very architectural, I would say, find here. And that's the original sign. If you go by there, you can still see the formation of the letters on the sign there that says Strollers Home.
Oh.
And quite naturally, next is, I would have to say probably your famous Lucy Craft Laney High School, which is named after Miss Lucy Craft Laney. Before Lucy Craft Laney High School, you had the Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute that sat on that property. I believe that is the stadium to your left, where the football stadium, where the present football stadium sits. There were homes. There were homes of some of your most prominent Black nurses, Black businessmen had big homes along that property line. And you're looking at probably, I believe, from talking with the alumni, I believe this is either the third time of a change of Lucy Craft Laney High School. But I would have to say that you won't find any other high school in the United States that have a dedicated alumni as Lucy Craft Laney High School here in Augusta, Georgia.
Yeah, this is a modern building.
Yeah.
And they actually tore down Haynes Institute and built a building, and then they tore that one down to create this one, right?
Right. The first Laney High School was quite naturally wood. It was a big wood structure. Yeah. And then came a second brick structure, and this would be the third.
Yeah.
And also, then Christ Presbyterian Church, which was where Miss Laney started the Haynes Normal Industrial Institute in 1886, actually 1883. This church at one time was located on Reynolds Street, and then they moved it over to be quite naturally part of be near, I guess, Haynes Normal Industrial Institute because of its significance and its ties to Miss Lucy Craft Laney. And it is still a functioning church in the community, and they sit right next to Laney High School football stadium. This building here is this was, as I indicated, many of the businesses that was in the Black community, that served the Black community. This was Dent's furniture store. One of the two, you had the Dent brothers. The brother here ran the furniture store, and I believe Representative Dent, Richard Dent, ran the flooring. They had a flooring business also, which the flooring business was located on 12th Street.
Now that's Papa Dent, right?
Papa Dent, yeah.
Papa Dent.
We nicknamed Papa Dent. And now
BL is this BL Dent, or is this?
Yeah, this is BL. BL. Yeah. We are quite naturally. A lot of first names escapes me because as my generation, Gail, and probably ours, we were raised to call the adults by their last name.
And that's how you know them.
You either could address them Mr. or Mrs. by their last name.
Yep.
Yeah. But
so
I'm so glad
BL was one of the first African Americans elected to the county commissioners during this time period, wasn't he?
Well, matter of fact, both brothers were, historically made historic political movements. Yeah, BL was, like I said, probably the first, one of the early first Black men to be elected. I think back then it was city council.
Yes, right. Mm-hmm. That was before we were combined.
Yeah.
And then Papa Dent went to the legislature.
Went to the legislature, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so glad to still see that building. Matter of fact, there's a still existing church has taken over that building, but it's just a point that that building has a significance to the Laney Walker Bethlehem quarter and to the Black community.
And that's one of the things that I see is we preserve. Mm-hmm. So we preserve the building, but not always do we preserve the story on what that building was.
Exactly.
And that's the
And that's
story.
how, and that's the key for us to continue the story, to tell the story. Because as a community change and new faces come in that wasn't raised here, that didn't live in Augusta, wasn't raised in this community, don't know the history. So those markers are very important too. They're not just sitting there for you to just pass by. You should have. Oftentimes, I always take me a stroll down both sides and read them myself to re-energize my knowledge of these great individuals that paved the way for me. And next is this is Irving Towers. Irving Towers, which sits on the opposite side of Laney High School, sits on which is also Laney Walker Boulevard, which would be a senior complex. But before this building, it was black-owned homes set on this property before you got the 84 Lumber Company. I think it was 84 now, but I think before, when I was a teenager, it was Maharan Lumber Company, I believe. And it sits on the corner there, and it's still, the building is still there. And I believe this, okay, this is the building to your left, the brick building, that was Hornsby Realty building. That was Hornsby Realty Company. The Hornsby also had a realty company. So that building is brick now, but it was brick. I believe even as a teenager, it was brick. And then I think the house next door was actually a Dugas. I think that was one of the Dugas family members' home.
Now Hornsby, that is Hornsby Elementary.
Exactly, named after Hornsby family. And also the Hornsby also started the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company.
It was one of those. Mm-hmm. So the Dugas family, how were they important?
The Dugas family was just a residence there. The Dugas family, quite naturally, was very important because they actually, I believe the Dugas was also very, they probably owned about, they were very business oriented. I put it like that. They at the time they had a funeral home. I know they had a funeral home. I can't think of the other businesses that they also engaged in. But the family was very business oriented. And then quite naturally, a lot of these businesses were quite naturally Black folks. If you wanted to start a business, quite naturally, we couldn't go to the bank to get the money. So a lot of your businesses are part of that 122 that I was talking about. They got loans from the Black church, from the Pilgrim Health and Life Insurance Company. From, if you study really, they finance a lot of your businesses. Also Hornsby Realty. Even though they own a lot of land, they were also served as, I guess, a lending mechanism if you came and wanted to open a business. Because back then they wanted to build that golden block, what we call the Golden Blocks area, which would be equivalent for us in Augusta would be the Black Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And this is Tabernacle, which is quite naturally one of your oldest Black churches in the Augusta community. Very, very served a very pivotal role in the Black community. A vision of Reverend Charles T. Walker. From talking with historians, particularly over at quite naturally by me being at the Laney Museum, Mr. Corey Rogers, I get around him a lot, but to say that even though Charles T. Walker was not an architect, they say he did the drawing for what you're looking at. And so it's just amazing of the talent that our visionaries had, and that was not their per se their aim of study.
Now, one of the things during the time period you're talking about, Tabernacle was one of the churches where your civil rights activists met and trained, and Martin Luther King actually spoke there.
Yeah, he actually spoke. He actually spoke at Tabernacle and Beulah Grove.
Yeah, he was. I don't think people realize he was here twice.
Yeah, he was twice. His first visit was at Tabernacle, and his second visit was at Beulah Grove. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he visited Beulah Grove a month before he was assassinated.
Yep, just before.
Mm-hmm. And this shot here, I wanted to give you I guess as folks would say, a bird's eye view, a hawk view, as one guy called it, of Laney Walker Boulevard. And the reason I wanted to give that shot was if you can see Tabernacle steeple. And that was another vision of Reverend Charles T. Walker. He wanted you to be able to see Tabernacle Baptist Church from all points of Augusta. And that was definitely keying in on the steeple. It has I forgot how many bells up there, but as a little boy, you could tell your time. If you have a watch, you could tell your time, because back then they rung the bell. They rung the bell every hour. And that was a sound that was very prevalent for me as a kid and as a teenager of hearing Tabernacle's church bell, particularly on Sundays.
Because that would help you know when you needed to get home, right?
No, that lets you know you're running late for church. And speaking of Reverend Charles T. Walker, this is his home that he stayed in, and which is on Laney Walker Boulevard. We definitely have to give kudos to Historic Augusta for having the vision to purchase this home. And as you can see, it is still an ongoing project, but at least it is, trust me, it looks 100 times better than the way it was. And we finally, when it was finally recognized as being his home, once again, I give a Historic Augusta kudos for having the vision to go out and buy it and purchase it and save it, and hopefully they can find another buyer to continue what they have started. Another structure that I'm very proud to see that's still there. We have to really help keep this building preserved. Tantillos, even though we talk about the Chinese community, this was also another convenience store in the community during my being as a little boy and a teenager. I purchased many things in Tantillo's store. Tantillo's were Greek. He was Greek. It was two Greek brothers that rented out the bottom space, and then Banneker Lodge number 3 always met upstairs. And they still, I believe they now own. I think they still own the building. They still meet there even today, and they have an awesome history. They were relocated here from I believe Philadelphia is for lodge number 3, and there's also another lodge in the back, which is a different I believe a different Mason order. But we had the pleasure of having 2 Black Mason orders in the Gwinnett area, in the Laney Walker Boulevard now area. But the other one sits on the corner of 10th and Spruce Street. Been back there for ever since I was a little boy.
Now, at this point, the Masons were still segregated, right?
Right. This is also still doing segregation and Jim Crow. This empty lot here is where the Lenox Theater sat. The Lenox Theater was the black theater that was created by 4 black businessmen to give the black community a theater for them to go. Because at the time, the Imperial, the Miller, and the Majestic, which is all 3 white theaters on Broad Street, the only one that at the time would allow black folks to come in would be the Imperial. So 4 black businessmen pulled $10,000 together. And they had the Lenox Theater built. I wanted to give you a view of the inside. The right there would be on a full day, perhaps on a Saturday. This is on the inside of the Lenox Theater. And I'm here to tell you that if you look at the Miller Theater and look inside, even though it did not have all the marble away, but you would see so many similarities of the architectural design between the Lenox Theater and the Miller Theater. And the reason why is because one of the investors knew the white architect that designed the Miller Theater.
Oh, interesting.
And on a Saturday, the matinee for us kids, we could get in just during matinee. I believe it was 10 bottle tops and a quarter.
10 bottle tops.
Yeah, so that gave it, believe it or not, that really helped keep our streets clean, because we were going around looking for bottle tops. So we would get the whole bottle, because back then you would take a bottle, you took soft drinks came in a bottle then. Everything was bottle, glass bottle. So not only you would get the top, but you take a bottle in one of the stores, they would give you, I think it was either a nickel or maybe even 3 cents for the bottle.
Yep. We used to recycle bottles. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. So that would help you get your bottle top so you could go in on a Saturday matinee and look at a movie.
That's a lot of people in there.
Yeah. I forgot what the capacity level for the Lenox Theater is. But you had a balcony area. As you can see, the balcony is full, and also along with the downstairs. You can smell the popcorn and the hot dogs from blocks away.
Yeah. So what happened to it?
The Lenox Theater current and rise, and once again, the Great Depression. The Great Depression, coming out of the Great Depression, then once again, integration.
I know at one point, part of I think in the 1950s or something, I think part of it burned, and they had to.
Well, you have so many conflicting stories on that, Galen. We're still trying to figure out exactly which one is which, on why Augusta decided to demolish the Lenox Theater down, which still makes either whatever reason it was still, I think it was a building that should have been preserved, should have been saved, and it's just no matter what the condition was, I believe it was Augusta. I feel needs to improve itself when it comes to preservation.
Now, James Brown, he played there, didn't he?
Yeah, James Brown. As I indicated, the same architect that designed the Miller designed the Lenox, so it was designed to where it could not only show movies, but you could have entertainers come in, talent. It was also designed for the community to be able to come in and also have things such as talent shows. I believe I don't know whether you know Tim Sanders. Tim Sanders is one of our I would say great musical prodigies of Augusta. Great saxophonist that is well traveled throughout the jazz community and played with a lot of your great black entertainers. I believe Tim told me he won a talent show Him and some other, they won first prize at a talent show at the Lenox Theater. But from my understanding, James Brown performed in the Lenox, Jackie Wilson. I think some of your other, I believe I was told that Count Basic performed in there. So it was a great caliber building that brought entertainment beyond measure to the Black community. Then Payne College. Payne College is the main building, but as a little boy, this is the hall that burned. This was the one that caught fire. Because as a little boy, as a teenager, the main building here, Higgett Hall was made of wood. It was wood structure with a clock, also with a bell. You could also hear his bell, but they had a clock there, and that's why that clock steeple is on that building to I guess to signify that I guess this was a building that they call it Build It Back. And Payne College is quite naturally one of Augusta has the pleasure of having one of our HBCU, which is part of the United Methodist and the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church family. One of your great business stories. This is probably one of the first business doing Reconstruction and doing Jim Crow, doing Reconstruction period where Black and white got together and formed this relationship and built this institution of higher learning for Black folks to go to.
Yeah. So if you went to the elementary schools, then you went to A.R. Johnson, or you went down to the bottom for junior high, then you went to Lucy Laney High School, and then potentially go to Payne College.
Particular thing, yeah. I wanted to give this shot, even though now it's Augusta Health System. When I was coming along during my period, Gwinnett Street, we had two hospitals at the time. You had the University Hospital and then Talmadge Memorial Hospital. So Talmadge would have been sitting pretty much somewhere, not exactly on this corner, but a little bit off a little bit. That would have been the other hospital, which is quite naturally named after, I believe Senator, I believe his first name was Eugene. But
yep, Eugene Talmadge.
Yeah, Eugene Talmadge. Which is now, that area now is quite naturally, at the time they got MCG, which was the Medical College of Georgia, which is now Augusta, I believe Augusta Health Sciences and Health System.
So tell me, during this time period, University Hospital, did it still have a black wing and a white wing? What about Talmadge?
Don't know that much about Talmadge, but I do know that University still had, you still had the black wing. You still had segregation in there, even when as a little boy for me. You had the side where black folks went and the side where white folks went. And the same with also in that quarter, you had the Augusta Health Department, which sat right I was probably in the middle of it, was just back a little bit. And that was the same kind. You would have black waiting room, white waiting room. This is Armstrong Plaza. This is they've added on since I was a little boy, but right in the middle there, where the Dollar Tree is, that was Gurley's grocery store when I was a little boy and a teenager.
And Gurley's had,
I forgot,
3 or 4. They had several stores throughout Augusta, didn't they?
I know Hills did. I'm not familiar with Gurley's having multiple stores. He may have.
Yeah.
But I do remember him being there, because it wasn't that far from my dad's shop. So quite naturally, I purchased a lot of goods. well, a lot of candy from from Girl's grocery store. Also, what I did, Gail, I went from one end of Gwinnett Street, and I went all the way down to the other end. As a little boy and as a teenager, this was Gwinnett Pharmacy. The building still stands, and on the side there, the smaller building was a black-owned business by Barton's Record Store. That was started by two brothers that was from Fitzgerald, Georgia, and they both was attending Payne College. And the oldest brother had a vision of opening up a record store. So that was his store served great, being right across the street from Payne College and being, like I said, once again, a Payne graduate. And my treat to myself, that was during probably after I came back home from college. The treat to myself was I got paid twice a month, Galen, so I would always treat myself to 2 albums a month.
Ha! The whole album, not just a 45, huh?
Not just the 45, I got the whole album.
Leon, you took us on a journey through your childhood in the up and down the Gwinnett Street, now Laney Walker Boulevard, and showed us so much. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your memories and what it was like to grow up in the Golden Blocks and the changes that we have seen happening since that time period.